to set the stage for us. Okay, but I think some may want that podium, son, but thank you anyway. And that person is none other than the son of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the Kenyan literary giant. And his son is here, and he's going to read for us a piece of poetry before we get the proceedings of this evening. We thought it was going to be apt to let that happen. So may I invite Mokomo wa Ngugi to do a piece of poetry for us. I thank you very much, sir. They will fix that.
Thank you. And thank you. Hello, can you hear me? Do I even need a microphone, actually? Anyway, first I want to say it's a great pleasure to share this stage with the Prime Minister. Oh, I guess I should turn this way. Oh. Yeah, to share this stage with the Prime Minister Keith Rowley, and of course, Dr. Hilary Beckles. I'm from Kenya, so I don't know if you have. Okay, anytime I tell people I'm from Kenya, they say I'm actually from Nigeria, but I'm from Eastern Africa. But I just wanted to say a few quick words before I get to the poem, and that is to thank the Emancipation Support Committee, Jackie Beckles, and also Dr. Asha Kambon, and also the people who made my visit here possible, my colleagues, Professor Carol Boyce Davis from Howard University and Cornell, Dr. Mulia Mae from UWI, from your UWI here, and also my colleague from Cornell, Amanda Johnson. So thank you for making this possible. I've been making jokes and saying that, that for me, I'm feeling more African here than when I'm in Kenya, right? So it's almost like a reverse journey for me. Before I begin my poem, I just wanted to say Haiti is very much on my mind because Kenya has sent police to Haiti, reminding me that we need to be very mindful of our history because this is an African country sending police to the first independent black nation in the world.
Okay, but I think some may want that podium, son.
I also wanted to say...
Thank you anyway.
I wanted to dedicate
and
this
that
reading
person
to Funzo,
is none other than the son of Ngugi wa Thiong'o,
who is with the Walker's Book Festival, but
Kenyan
he passed away.
literary
I was supposed
giant.
to meet him, and
I've
also been making a joke saying
and he's
he
going
really
to
didn't
read
want to
for
meet
us
me, so he left.
a piece of poetry before we get the proceedings of this evening. We thought it was going to be apt to let that happen. So may I invite Mokomo wa Ngugi to do a piece of poetry
this poem,
for
I call
us.
it a collage
I
of
thank
death
you
masks,
very much, sir.
because it's about the revolutionaries we have lost. It's almost like a roll call of the revolutionaries we have lost along the way. So, okay, all protocols observed, as we say in Kenya. All right? And a collage of death marks. Thank you. Steve Biko. Hello, can you hear me? With our two hands, do I even need a microphone, actually? Arrows, deep poison with anyway, first I want to say it's a great pleasure to share this stage with the Prime Minister. To peer past midnight, I have returned to the source. Che Guevara. Yeah, to share this stage with the Prime Minister Keith Rowley, and hours later, a key turns, and I stand on my wounded leg. Shoot cower. I'm from Kenya. Your guillotine can only I don't know if you have not what it dreams. Okay, anytime I tell people I'm from Kenya, transfer known. They say I'm actually from Nigeria, unless slaves to a cause. But I'm from Eastern Africa. In my militant servitude, I find freedom. But I just wanted to say a few quick words before I get to the poem. When I fell, that is to thank it was only to go find Mondlane to tell him Mozambique was free, and in Tanzania freedom had begun to throw. And also Dr. Asha Kambon, and also the distance between the bullet and my heart, I cannot remember the prayer my mother taught. Professor Carol Boyce Davis from Howard University and Cornell, for me. Dr. Mulia Mae from UWI, from UWI here. Don't they know and also my colleague from Cornell, Amanda Johnson. So thank you for making this possible. Mondlane. I've been making jokes and saying that I was reading that for me, I'm feeling more African here than when I'm in Kenya, right? So it's almost like a reverse journey. I do not fear for me or their death. Before I begin my poem, I just wanted to say Haiti final plan is very much on my mind because Kenya has sent police to Haiti. Malcolm X reminded me that I need to be very mindful of our history because this is an African country, and if it fails sending police, then it can to the first independent black nation in the world.
Okay, but I think some may want that podium, son.
I also wanted to say,
thank you anyway.
I wanted to dedicate
and
this
that person
to
is none other than the son of Ngugi wa Thiong'o,
who is it?
the
Walker's Book Festival.
Kenyan literary giant.
And his
son is here, and he is going to read for us a piece of poetry before we get the proceedings of this evening. We thought it was going to be apt to let that happen. So may I invite Mokumu wa Ngugi to do a piece of poetry
this poem,
for
I call it a collage
us.
of
Thank you
death
very
marks,
much, sir.
because it's about the revolutionaries we have lost. It's almost like a roll call of the revolutionaries we have lost along the way. So, okay, all protocols observed, as we say in Kenya. All right? And, a collage of death marks. Thank you. Steve Biko. Hello, can you hear me? With our two hands, do I even need a microphone, actually? Arrows.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, Pastor Aaron, it's a great pleasure to share this stage with the Prime Minister.
This afternoon,
To appear past midnight, I have returned to the source. Che Guevara. Yeah, to share this stage with the Prime Minister Keith Rowley. And hours later, a key turns and I stand on my wounded leg. I'm from Kenya. Your guillotine can I don't know if you actually know what it dreams. Okay, anytime I tell people I'm from Kenya, transfer known. They say I'm actually from Nigeria, unless left to a cause. But I'm from Eastern Africa. In my militant servitude, I find freedom. But I just wanted to say a few quick words before I get to the poem. When I and that is to thank it was only to go find Mont Blanc to tell him Mozambique was free. Jackie Nazania, freedom had begun to flow. And also Dr. Asha Gashia Longa. And also the distance between the bullet and my heart. I cannot remember the prayer my mother taught. Professor Carol Boyce Davis from Howard University negotiated this passage for me. Dr. Mulia Mai from Tolia and also my colleague from Cornell. So thank you for making this possible. Mont Blanc. I read making jokes and saying that I was reading that for me, I'm feeling more African here than when I'm in Kenya, right? Possibility so it's almost like a reverse journey. A reverse journey for me, or they are dead. Before I begin my poem, I just want to say Haiti final plan is very much on my mind because Kenya has sent police to Haiti. Malcolm X reminded me that I need to be very mindful of our history because this is an African country, and if it fails sending police, then it can be the first independent black nation in the world.
Okay, some may want that podium,
I also wanted to say,
thank you anyway. And that person is none other than the son of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the Kenyan literary giant. And his son is here, and he is going to read for us a piece of poetry before we get the proceedings of this evening. We thought it was going to be apt to let that happen. So may I invite Mokumu wa Ngugi to do a piece of poetry for us. I thank you very much, sir.
Because it's about the revolutionaries we have lost. It's almost like a roll call of the revolutionaries we have lost along the way. So, okay, all protocols observed, as we say in Kenya. All right? A collage of death marks. Thank you. Steve Biko. Hello, can you hear me? With our two hands, do I even need a microphone, actually?
Thank you very much.
Anyway, Pastor Aaron, it's a great pleasure to share this stage with the Prime Minister. To appear past midnight, I have returned to the source. Che Guevara. Yeah, to share this stage with the Prime Minister Keith Rowley. And hours later, a key turns and I stand on my wounded leg. I'm from Kenya. Your guillotine can I don't know if you actually know what it dreams. Okay, anytime I tell people I'm from Kenya, transfer known. They say I'm actually from Nigeria, unless left to a cause. But I'm from Eastern Africa. In my militant servitude, I find freedom. But I just wanted to say a few quick words before I get to the poem. When I and that is to thank it was only to go find Mont Blanc to tell him Mozambique was free. Jackie Nazania, freedom had begun to flow. And also Dr. Asha Gashia Longa. And also the distance between the bullet and my heart. I cannot remember the prayer my mother taught. Professor Carol Boyce Davis from Howard University negotiated this message for me. Dr. Mulia Mai from Zimla from Tolia and also my colleagues from Cornell, among which so thank you for making this possible. Montana. I read making jokes and saying that I was reading that for me I'm feeling more African here when I'm in Kenya. Right? Possibly so it's almost like a reverse journey. I reverse journey for me. Before I begin my poem, I just want to say Haiti is very much on my mind because Kenya, we live in Muslim for days. Malcolm X reminded me that I need to be very mindful of our history because this is an African country and it feels same in for leading to the first independent black nation in the world.
Some may want that
showing up with that dignity, with that pride, and with that confidence in self. That energy that we are able to bring to our spaces, on the spaces within which we find ourselves on this day, is extremely significant and important to our total well-being. This morning, our Prime Minister wondered about us getting more young people involved. And I'm sure when he sat and picked at the podium, not at the stage on Piccadilly Street, and he saw the hundreds of young people passing him, dancing, chanting on stilts, playing their drums, I'm sure he felt tremendously proud. And I want to now give those beautiful children of ours a lusty round of applause. Because they came here, they showed up, they looked good, and they performed extremely well. And this is what this festival is doing for our country. We are investing in our youth and giving them an opportunity to learn more about themselves, to learn more about their culture, and to do it with joy. They enjoy it. They love it. We love our culture. And when all of us are able to gather and we are all happy, we are all in good spirits, everybody have a nice smile on their face, everybody is kind and loving, what more do we need than to learn to love self and culture and understand that the power of our being comes from within? That once we were able to tap into that self, we will be able to be the most powerful beings on this earth. And we are, because look at what we have survived, and we continue to be so strong, yet so powerful, and even more so beautiful. Give yourself another round of applause. Yes? I want you to give to the 200 entrepreneurs that we see in the Lynch Yasu Omawale village. I want you to give them for showing up a round of applause. All of the artists who have, the hundreds of artists who have performed in this space in the last 6 days. All the service providers who have made this possible. I want us to thank them also with a round of applause, please. And I'm doing this because I want us to appreciate what goes into making this happen. And at the same time, I want to ask that our government, and I know they have supported us all through this process, but at this time, we need more assistance. What we are receiving is not covering the cost of what we need to do. And we want to do it bigger. We want to do it better. We want to make this the greatest celebration of Africa outside of Africa. We just had a brother who stood here from Kenya and said that he felt more African here than at home. Which means that we are doing something extremely wonderful and powerful, my people. And we have to, the results are all positive. Look at us all here today. Look at our young people. These are the medicine that we need to deal with the illnesses that we have in the society. Investment in our culture and in our communities. And I am pleading that as we consider how funds are allocated, that we understand that we transform lives, that we can make lives better if we spend more of our funds on culture and the development of our communities. And that is a critical part of the decolonization and reparations process that we, as part of that journey of emancipation. So I thank you all for being here. Let us continue this conversation among ourselves. Let us understand what's happening around us and how we can help with the right conversation, with the right encouragement. Yes, we have created a world that perhaps manifests also this culture of violence for which we are concerned. But there are ways to deal with it. So let us try investing in our culture, investing in our community, and move forward with our heads up, paying attention to all that's happening around us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sister Zakia. Thank you. Okay, brother, we hear you. Thank you very much. Sister's very passionate, very committed, and we all know her to be very, very hardworking. It's now my pleasure. Okay, brother, thank you. We hear you. Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to invite Sister Eureka Huggins. Sister Eureka is out of D.C. She is going to read for us a proclamation that came out of the Commissioner Mayor's Office on Caribbean and Community Affairs in Washington, D.C. Erica, what a pleasure to see you, and thank you for joining us for Emancipation.
Thank you, beautiful sister. Thank you, beautiful sister. Giving thanks and praise to the Creator and the ancestors for allowing us to be here. Honorable Keith Rowley, my sister Zakia, Professor Beckles, and the Cambons, thank you so much. Beautiful family, greetings. Thank you so much. It's so good to be home. Happy Emancipation Day to you. Those of us who live away from home, we are very fortunate in Washington, D.C., that we have a mayor, Mayor Muriel Bowser, and the director for the Mayor's Office on Caribbean and Community Affairs, Director Natalie Snyder, recognize the tremendous contribution that Trinidadian, Tobagonian, Washingtonians, as we are called, make to the District of Columbia. So it is in that spirit that I read this proclamation to you. It's a proclamation, Trinidad and Tobago Emancipation Day, August 1st, 2024. Whereas on August 1st each year, Trinidad and Tobago Emancipation Day commemorates the 1838 emancipation of people of African descent from slavery. And whereas Emancipation Day is observed in the former British territories of the Caribbean, the US, and worldwide with religious services, festivals, carnivals, all-night vigils, and other commemorative events. And whereas Trinidadian and Tobagonian greatly enhanced the District of Columbia and global culture and economy through its music, food, dance, and through its contributions to business, education, science, technology, healthcare, tourism, and numerous other fields. Whereas the District of Columbia proudly joins the Trinidadian and Tobagonian diaspora in celebrating its Emancipation Day in honor of Trinidad and Tobago's illustrious past and to embrace the promise of its rich and more vibrant future. Whereas the Mayor's Office on Caribbean and Community Affairs is committed to honoring the contributions of Washington Caribbean diaspora and to celebrate its exemplary accomplishments. Now, therefore, I, the Mayor of Washington, D.C., do hereby proclaim August 1st, 2024 as Trinidad and Tobago Emancipation Day in Washington, D.C. We are here to serve, and even though we are away from home, we are always in one spirit, in one love. Peace and blessings, family.
It's critical to keep your masses happy. And they're telling us, first, I was blocking you, Honorable Prime Minister, so that wouldn't work at all. Then they said, but now you're blocking the Honorable Professor Beckles. That can't work either. So, you know, we have to ensure that the people have what they want on these days. So I thank you very much, and I really thank the brothers who are assisting us here with all of this technology and moving things around. Just give me one moment before I introduce our speaker, just to say that there are many people in the audience here who've come from away. One person in particular I'm just going to mention, and that is Dr. Professor Carol Boyce Davies, who flew in just for Emancipation. And then when she heard that Professor Hilary Beckles was going to be speaking, she said, oh my God, no, I can't go anywhere. She was telling family and friends who wanted to take her off somewhere. She said, impossible, I have to be here this afternoon. So we know there are many other people who came from afar and are home. We welcome you. We say, like our Ghanaian brothers and sisters last year taught us the magic word, akwaba, which meant welcome, welcome. So we welcome you, all of you. We welcome you back home, and we hope that you had good trips back home. Now, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to invite the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, to give his remarks on Emancipation Day. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Sister Dr. Asha Kambon. A very good evening to all of you present here at the Queen's Park Savannah in Port of Spain this afternoon, and those of you who are following us on platforms across the nation and elsewhere. Permit me to acknowledge the persons who have done the work and have been able to encourage us to gather in this place for this auspicious occasion. I refer specifically to every member of the Emancipation Support Committee who initiated and sustained this very worthy cause of African people, especially those in Trinidad and Tobago. But I would want to extend a very special welcome and thanks to my friend and colleague, Professor Hilary Beckles, for agreeing to come to us this evening to be with us as we celebrate, but more importantly, in his discourse as our featured speaker, to educate us for all times. On your behalf, I say thank you, Professor Beckles. But this is 2024. It's not 1838. And therefore, as we listen all day, and may I say all season, to the reminding quotations, to the understanding and the reflections of our ancestors there are some realities that we must confront. None of us in this gathering, none of us today should or would experience a child or a member of our family being taken away by an owner and sold like livestock. None of us would be beaten with the lash for disagreeing on anything, not the least of which disagreeing to provide manual labor for free. None of us would be punished by being put in a barrel of nails and rolled down the hill, or being asked to step in a pot of boiling water. None of us would face those inhumane conditions. But we still, in 2024, are required to focus on freedom. We still have to focus on our contribution as builders on a foundation laid by those who bore the pain, those who actually experienced those horrendous days and nights, those who came through the door in Cape Coast, Ghana, and for whom it was told they would never return. We still have to walk onward and upward. So what do we do as contributors to this great legacy that we have to build day by day, year by year, not only for ourselves, but for our children? This morning, at the site of the libation, I did comment that I would like to see more young people, but maybe I had forgotten that the young people were up the road. And when I went up the road, they were up there as vibrant as ever, as enthusiastic as ever, and they welcomed us and they danced their way through the streets by the hundreds, and I dare say by the thousands. Ladies and gentlemen, emancipation in Trinidad and Tobago, emancipation in our diaspora is well underway. It is in good hands. So I want to thank you adults who organized those young people, because that is what it takes to bring about the future that we hanker after. Let us emancipate ourselves through education. We have saved a lot of time. Let us use that time wisely to educate ourselves. When I was in high school and you wanted to solve a very complex problem, you were required to use a slide rule and tables of calculus to get an answer. Today you just use your finger and you tap some numbers and the gadget tells you the answer. When I was growing up in Tobago and you wanted to cook a meal, you had to cut wood, light a fire. Sometimes when it's raining, the wood would be wet and it would be so difficult to get the fire started, and the wood fire will take so long to cook the food. Today we're all cooking with gas, so we're saving time. What do we do with the time that we save? I want to appeal to all of you today. If you are parents or guardian, if you are raising an African child, if you are raising any child, use that time wisely to bring them up with all the attributes of good values. Let our children know that it's not sufficient to talk about our ancestors and how they survived the lash and the field. Let them know that good manners will strengthen them in today's world. Let them know that caring is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And therefore, if you know one that is engaged in violence of any kind, or choosing crime as a way of life, you would make your contribution to building this legacy by turning them away from that, whether you're a friend, parent, or member of that community. Our emancipation, our freedom is not assured if we don't nurture it, if we don't take care of it. Let us emancipate ourselves through our health. Let us emancipate ourselves and gain that freedom through our diet and not engage in practices where one of the biggest problems in our country in the 21st century, well away from the 19th century, where we are fighting non-communicable diseases and our diet is killing us through high blood pressure and diabetes, largely because of the choices that we are making now. Let us make those choices that are required to emancipate us now. Let us accept that we care for the weak, and therefore our national social programs are not entitlements, but are in fact good fortune which we must make work for us, especially those who are least able to look after themselves. Let us not waste time. Let us do as is said by Martin. Time is nothing, but it's what man does with time. That time becomes something. In the 21st century, in the African diaspora, let us get busy emancipating ourselves by doing the good things that we can do to build on the legacy of those who went before us. So today, I ask you to listen very attentively to the words of wisdom, the facts of research, and strengthen ourselves as we engage others who might prefer if we do not speak of our experiences and of our demands. Let us speak with confidence that we know what we are talking about because we have been well-read, well-researched, and well-educated. And this evening is just one of those days. So as we go from here today, I want a commitment from you that you will read more about Africa. You will read more about Africans. You will think more about yourself and your children and your grandchildren, and you would have that future where in our national anthem, we sing it lustily when we say, with boundless faith in our destiny. I am here so proud to be with you, so proud to be an African in this diaspora. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Honorable Prime Minister. I particularly liked, and I'll just restate these words from the Prime Minister because I think it's worth restating. He said, our freedom is not assured unless we take care of it. And then he gave us some advice as how we might be able to take care of it. So I do hope that if we remember something that we can take home, when you go back home and your neighbor says, what did you hear today? What were they talking about? You might be able to say, you know, our Prime Minister said, we've got to take care of our freedom, and gave us some advice around how to do that. It's now my distinct honor and pleasure, and we should, by the way, thank him one more time. Can I hear a thank you to the Prime Minister one more time? Absolutely, very good, thank you. It's now my distinct honor and pleasure to present to you Dr. Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor of the University, Pro-Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies and Chair of the CARICOM Reparations Committee. And we've all been inspired by Professor Hilary Beckles over the last couple of years. We've really had him working hard. He's been all over the region, all over the world, making sure that everyone understands the issues of reparations. Professor Beckles, the floor is yours. Thank you anyway.
I wanted to take the
And that person is none other than the summit. And his son is here to lead before we get the proceedings of this evening. It was going to be apt to let that happen. So may I invite Mokumu and Eugene to do a piece of poetry for us. I thank you very much, sir.
Because it's we have lost. It's almost like a roll call of the revolutionaries we have lost along the way. Protocols observed, as we say in Kenya. All right. The collage of death marks. Thank you. Steve Biko. Hello, can you hear me? With our two hands. Do I even need a microphone, actually? Keep poison with anyway, Pastor Ron, it's a great pleasure to share this stage with the Prime Minister. To be a past midnight, I have returned to the source. Che Guevara. To share this stage with the Prime Minister Keith Rowan. And hours later, a key turns and I stand on my wounded leg. I'm from Kenya. You're guillotine. I don't know if you have to know what it means. Okay, anytime I tell people I'm from Kenya, transfer known. They say I'm actually from Nigeria, unless there's to a call. But I'm from Eastern Africa. In my militant servitude, I find freedom. But I just wanted to say a few quick words before I get to the poem. And that is to thank you. It was on my profile on planning to tell you Mozambique was free. Jackie Nazania, freedom had begun to die. And also Dr. Asha Gashia. And also the people who made the bullet in my heart. I cannot, my colleagues, the prayer my mother taught, Professor Carol Boyce Davis, that Howard University this message for me. Dr. Mulia Mai, from Zimila, from Tonya and also my colleagues from Cornell, so thank you for making this possible. Mont Blanc. I read making jokes and saying that I was ready. That's for me, I'm feeling more African here when I'm in Kenya, right? Possibly, so it's almost like a reverse journey. I reverse journey from me over there. Before I begin my poem, I just want to say that Haiti is very much on my mind because Kenya really reminded me that I need to be very mindful about this because this is an African country sending for the identity of the black nations
Some may want that.
Showing up with that dignity, with that pride, and with that confidence in self.
Do we
that
have a right
that we are able
to celebrate?
Have
we earned
our
the
spaces,
right
on the spaces
to celebrate?
We find ourselves on this day?
The answer
extremely significant
is perfectly
and important
clear.
To our total well-being.
We have every reason to celebrate emancipation.
More young people involved, and I'm sure when he sat,
emancipation is a battle that we have won. It's a battle that has cost us very dearly in human life. For 400 years in this Caribbean, there wasn't a generation of African people in this region who did not go to war to end slavery. From island to island, across the mainland, the African people in the Caribbean and beyond fought and won this battle. And we have every right to celebrate this victory. But celebration of a victory in a battle does not mean that you have won the war. The war is yet to be won. The struggle must continue because there will be many other battles that we have to win before we can declare a victory in the war. I wish to emphasize also that we must see emancipation both as an event, which it was, an act of the British Parliament passed, it was an event. But for us, emancipation is a process. It's an ongoing process. And until we have received reparations, we would not have won this war. Allow me to say that we must understand the enormity of this struggle. The enslavement of our people was a global enterprise. It was the biggest business venture and the largest commercial operation in the history of the world. Every continent of this planet was caught up in the enterprise of enslaving African people, and we were scattered across this planet to provide enslaved labor for the colonizers. So understand the parameters and the dimensions of this matter. The Emancipation Act was at the same time, and I wish to emphasize this, the Emancipation Act was the most racist act ever passed in the British Parliament. We were encouraged in school to celebrate emancipation as a moral and religious circumstance. But let us analyze that piece of legislation. First of all, the British government was clear in its objective. How can we maintain long-term control over black people while at the same time removing an element, the element which was called chattel? Can we remove that element and maintain the control of black people for at least another 100 years? And so the British Parliament did the following. It sent a team of accountants to the Caribbean, financial experts and accountants, to calculate the commercial value of the black people in the Caribbean, the asset value. The report showed that there were 600,000 enslaved Africans in the Caribbean. And they estimated that the commercial value, the asset value, the property value of those 600,000 people was 45 million pounds. 45 million pounds was the commercial value of our forbearance. Then the Parliament decided that we are going to pay the enslavers back this 45 million so that with emancipation they would not be out of pocket. We're going to repay them the commercial value of our enslaved ancestors. And so the act proceeded on the basis that the black people in the Caribbean were property. They were classified under law as property. They were not human, they were property, and we, the Parliament, will pay property compensation to those who own the property. And therefore, for the first time, the British Parliament had to admit that if they were going to pay compensation to the slave owners, the nature of that compensation was property compensation. If the government takes away somebody's property, the government has to pay the replacement value of that property. And thus, the British government decided, yes, the black people are not human beings, they are property, and we're going to give 20 million pounds in cash to the enslavers, and we're going to make them work for, after they emancipated, they have to work for another 4 years for free to work off the remaining 25 million. And that was the act of emancipation. 20 million in cash, 25 million in additional free labor for 4 extra years after they were freed. Now we understand all of this because the objective of emancipation was to allow the enslavers to control our labor and our bodies for another 100 years. So they had their agenda. Now, we need to understand also that slavery of the African people in the Caribbean was also a process of genocide. Genocide. This is not a loose term that we are using. We have studied the population of Africans in every Caribbean country. And we know, for example, that the British slave traders, they brought 6 million Africans into the Caribbean. 6 million Africans they brought to the Caribbean. At emancipation, there were only 600,000 surviving. How do you reduce 6 million people into 600,000? In other words, only 10% of our ancestors survive. Only 10% of our ancestors survive. So when we celebrate emancipation, let us be clear. We are also celebrating survival. The survival of the Holocaust against the African people. It was deliberate, it was planned, it was orchestrated, it was a business model that was put into effect. And so, when we speak of enslavement as a crime against humanity, it's a double crime. The crime of reducing human beings to property and the crime of genocide. So it's a double charge we have against the British government and all of their enslaving interests. The question is, why did this system last so long? And the answer is clear. The British government said that slavery was in the national interest, that Britain cannot transform itself into an industrial nation without access to that labor of African people in the Caribbean. And understand the numbers. The 6 million who were imported, they had their offspring over time. So in effect, what the calculation shows is that Britain had 200 years of free labor from 20 million people. Put a value on that. Calculate that. 200 years of free labor from 20 million people. Can you imagine what a country will do with that today? And that is what we were a part of. And everybody was involved. From top to bottom, the royal family was involved. The aristocracy was involved. The middle classes were involved. The working class people on the streets were involved. All of their institutions were involved. The Bank of England, the Church of England, the insurance companies, the major high street banks, all of them, the universities were all involved in making profits out of free labor. That was the system that we are up against even today. So the question then has to be asked. We know what the British strategy was. Change the legislation, give us legal freedom, but maintain control over us for another 100 years. That was their strategy. But what was our strategy? What was our strategy? Our strategy was very clear. We knew exactly what we wanted out of emancipation because we have the evidence to show what our was stolen from us. We have a right to it. The British Parliament discussed that claim. They discussed the claim of the enslaved people for reparations in 1830, 1831, 1833. They discussed our claim. And they concluded that we have no right, we have no claim, because the emancipation that they're giving us, that is our reparations. And we are not entitled to any financial compensation, even though the enslavers were entitled. So we demanded right there and then that we wanted reparations. So don't think that the reparations movement is a movement of today. From the very beginning of emancipation, our foreparents were demanding reparations for the stolen labor that they give. And we have the documentation to prove this. They also wanted land. They wanted land right across the Caribbean. They demanded the right to land because they are Africans. African civilization is rooted in a cultural attachment to land. It's where your spirits live, your ancestors. Land is the source of your culture, and they wanted land to reconstitute their culture. They wanted land to rebuild their families. They wanted land and they demanded it. They also wanted civil rights, the right to vote, the right to cast a ballot in local government elections. They wanted the right to participate in the political process. They wanted freedom from colonization. And the evidence of this struggle is most remarkable. When you put all of this together, these rights that they were demanding, what do they constitute? They constitute a demand for justice. They constitute a demand for independence because they wanted to be independent of the plantation system. They wanted to be independent of British authority. They wanted justice and independence. So again, these are ideas that we believe are modern ideas of our generation. No. Our foreparents, 180, 90 years ago, were talking about justice and independence. So the struggle in which we are in is an old and ongoing struggle. Now, why, of course, did they wish to have these things? Because they wanted to restore their dignity as a people. They wanted to establish their humanity as a fact of law and culture. This is what they wanted, to rebuild their families. And I wish to say something about rebuilding families because we were denied the right to family. We had no legal access to family. We were the only people on planet Earth who were stripped of the right to have a family. That was the experience. So when you hear conversations about, well, slavery is something you find all over the world. No group of people on planet Earth has ever experienced chattel slavery. This is something that is unique to us Africans. This is what they did to us. Define us in law as non-human. Deny us all of the human rights that you would expect the right to family, the right to raise your children, the right to get married, all of these rights were stripped away and we were denied. So, emancipation was the beginning. Emancipation was the beginning. And one of the reasons why I am a great supporter of regional integration and the freedom of movement of Caribbean people is because I know that in the 100 years after emancipation, the black people of the Caribbean were going from island to island looking for their families. They were leaving Trinidad, Barbados, St. Kitts. They were leaving all over the Caribbean, going in search of their children, going in search of their parents, because the children were sold to other islands, the parents were sold to other islands, and for the 100 years after emancipation, the African people in the Caribbean were up and down this region looking for their families to reconstitute their domestic life. That is why I know that all of us in this Caribbean are integrated because we went in search for our families. And it was a heroic journey because to leave an island, get on a schooner, because somebody told you that there is a person with your name in Jamaica, and you leave Antigua or Barbados and go to Jamaica. And all of that meant that all of us became intertwined. And understand this, look at the numbers. When that act was passed, only 30% of all the black people in the Caribbean were born in Africa. 30% were born in Africa. 70% were born right here in the Caribbean. In other words, the African children, the African grandchildren, their great-grandchildren were born here, and there was an intergenerational bond of African consciousness. Because you were born in Africa and your children are born in Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, the bond was there. And the African community remained tightly interwoven because of this history. Why did we pursue? How did we do it? Here again, I'm going to give you some basic facts that would probably have escaped public conversation. Do you know that there were as many black rebellions after emancipation than during slavery? There's a general belief that after emancipation, African people went passive, laid back. On the contrary, African people became even more rebellious after emancipation because they knew that what they have received was not the emancipation they wanted. And island by continent, rebellions were emerging every 10, 15 years, so that in fact, here is a statistic. The British authorities killed more Africans in the 100 years after emancipation than in the 100 years preceding emancipation. They killed more Africans in the 100 years after emancipation than in the 100 years before emancipation, because the struggle continued and continued. These are important dimensions of our history, because you have to ask the question, well, how and why did they kill more Africans after emancipation? If you take, for example, the St. Vincent Rebellion of 1841, they slaughtered black people in St. Vincent because they wanted to occupy the land that was unoccupied. Then in Guyana, 1856, the black people in Guyana revolted for justice and freedom. They slaughtered them too. Then in Jamaica, 1865, Morant Bay, there is famine among the black people. There's unoccupied land. The black people go and occupy the land to plant crops. the British government instructed the governor, get them off the land of the crown. And they slaughtered them in Jamaica too. Then in Barbados, 1876, the people rose up for land and better wages, and they slaughtered them too. So decade by decade after emancipation, right up to the 1930s, black people were politically activated in search of justice, reparations, and independence. And that is the struggle that brought us into the 20th century. That is a struggle that was born in Trinidad and this country, where people like Sylvester Williams launched the Pan-African movement here, where people like J.J. Thomas wrote about liberty and freedom of the former enslaved community, where this PNM party originated in that struggle with Ciola James, Sylvester Williams, Eric Williams, here to bring this movement forward, to bring it out of the 19th century and bring it into the 20th century. And the PNM, as an organization, originated here in this struggle and was the most progressive organization in this region. And we give thanks for that important development. Now, up comes again reparations. Let us talk about the 1962 project. The 1962 project, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, independence. What did Dr. Williams do? Dr. Williams went to London to sit down with the British government. And he carried with him his 5-year development plan to create industries in Trinidad, to create employment for the people. The British government told him, not a penny. Eric Williams knew better than anyone else the significance of 200 years of free labor from 20 million people. He had written the classic book on the subject. He told the British government, you owe us reparations for development. You owe us reparations for development. How are we going to transform this colony into an independent nation without a capital injection? And that capital injection you owe us. It would bring tears to your eyes, I can tell you, to read the letters written by the British High Commissioner in Port of Spain, Norman Costar. Sir Norman Costar wrote to the British Prime Minister to say, well, Dr. Williams is coming and he's asking for investments to create employment for the working people of this country. He has a 5-year strategic plan and he's going to be asking you to contribute to that development plan. And you must not give him a penny. The High Commissioner here telling the Prime Minister, do not give him a penny, because if you give him a penny, you will encourage him, and he is not the kind of politician we, the British government, want to encourage. And so, Dr. Williams met with the British government, presented his 5-year plan, presented his industrial plan, calling for support to transform this country, and they chased him away. And this is what Dr. Williams said in the aftermath of that experience. He said, the British government see us like an orange. He was addressing a group of students at London University. The British government see us Caribbean people like an orange. When he was asked to explain, he said, well, they have sucked us dry. They have sucked us dry and thrown the peel on the floor. That was how he saw it. Alexander Bustamante had the same problem. 1962 again. Jamaica going to independence. Bustamante, the premier, is going to London to meet with the British government to ask them to contribute. They did not call it reparations, they called it compensation, but they knew what they were speaking about because they told the British government, you owe us, you owe us. Sir Arthur Lewis was with them and he called it Britain's Black Debt. Britain's Black Debt. That is what Sir Arthur Lewis called it. And you owe us. The same situation. They told Sir Alexander Bustamante of Jamaica, you are on your own. On your own. You want independence? Well, take it, but you're on your own. If you have the audacity to demand independence from us, you're on your own. You're on your own. Now, at that time, Mr. Edward Seaga, who was a young minister in the Jamaica government, but who later became Prime Minister. Edward Seaga became so angry in that meeting with the British government. And he gave a speech which we have in the records. And this is what he told the British government. You colonized this island in 1655. This is now 1962. And from 1655 to 1962, 300 years, this is what you did to Jamaica. You brought 1.5 million Africans into Jamaica. Jamaica became the wealthiest colony. Jamaica financed your industrial development. And this is what you're going to say to us. But look at the legacy you have left in Jamaica. Look at the mess you have left in Jamaica. Look at the mess. 80% of the people can't read or write. We have housing for 20% of the population. We have school spaces for 10% of the children. This is the mess you have left in Jamaica. And you are asking us to take responsibility for that. You need to come and help us clean up that mess that you have left behind. The British government was adamant. You want independence? You're on your own. Take it and go away. That is how our 1962 project was conceptualized, in the middle of a demand for reparations, which we thought we have a right to, and which they rejected, and rejected with arrogance. And so, all of our islands, countries, went into independence without the development support of Britain that had exploited us for 300 years. No reparations, no finance for industrial development, no support to transform their colony into a nation. How do you convert a colony with a mess like that into a viable democracy? And this is why I always take off my hat to Caribbean politicians over the years. I take off my hat. I take off my hat because I know that what our leaders have been doing since the 1962 project, we have been ourselves and off we went. But the result of that is what the British had expected. They wanted us to borrow, to go into debt to finance development. And so we went off into our independence, borrowing money to build schools, borrowing money to build hospitals, borrowing money to do agriculture, borrowing money to build roads, all of the things that a modern nation would need. We borrowing money because we did not get the reparations that was due to us. And that is why I say we found ourselves in debt because we were driven into debt by the British people. We were driven into debt because we had no choice. If you take responsibility for yourselves and you need schools and hospitals and roads, you have to give the people these modern amenities. Debt. And now they say that the Caribbean countries are the most indebted countries in the world. They have the nerve to say that we are the most indebted countries in the world because we had to borrow to achieve everything. Now, I believe we have now come to a fork in the road. And Prime Minister Rowley made reference to this. The 1962 project, Jamaica and Trinidad, followed by Barbados and Guyana and so on in 66. The time has come for us to take a new guard. We've had 60 plus years, take a new guard. I use the cricket metaphor. Every decent batsman knows that when you score 50 runs, you take a new guard. You score 50 runs, you ask the umpire to give you a new guard, and you start again because you're going for the big one. You're going for the century. You change your guard, and you dig in and you start again for the second 50 so that when you reach the 100, you can raise your bat. And so it is in politics. We now need to take a new guard. And this is why. We have a younger generation of men who we are struggling to bring them integrated into the society and the economy as responsible citizens. And both in Kingston, Jamaica, and Port of Spain, Trinidad, we have a problem with young male black crime. We have this problem in Port of Spain and in Kingston, Jamaica. We have this problem. I am not a believer in blaming the victims. There is an explanation that we have to understand. Younger generations do not believe that they are given the same treatment to be equal citizens. I know that in this country, the governments over the years have spent an enormous amount of money on the education of working class people. I know that as a fact. In fact, this republic spends more money per capita on education than any other in the region. Now, despite that enormous investment in young people, access to secondary, tertiary education, supported by the state, we still have a group of young men who are resistant to the stimulation. The stimulation is there. Here's access. Here are programs. The state is going to invest. Why is it that we have a percentage that has turned its back on the society's values? We have the same situation in Kingston. We have the same situation in Kingston. This is not a problem to be dealt with in terms of a blame game. There's no blaming. There is only understanding. There is only comprehension. There's no blaming to be had. What did we do? What did we do wrong? Or what did we not do enough of to avoid these circumstances over the last 60 years? I have one or two things to consider. I have heard the argument that crime is effectively a public health crisis. I support that thesis because I know that the psychological harm that has been done to our people generation over generation is enormous. So when we speak of reparations, we're not just speaking about throwing money at the issue. We have to find a way to rehabilitate these young people, bring them equally in, and it requires psychological and public health interventions. In other words, we have to start again with a new guard to look at this problem through different eyes. Let me give you an example of a case that I am writing a paper on right now. An enslaved man by the name of Jupiter on a Barbados sugar estate, 1756. Hear me, 1756. And he's an enslaved man on the plantation in Barbados. And one morning he gets up and disappears, vanish, can't be found. The slave owner went to the Bridgetown harbor and was told that an African with that description got on a boat and went to St. Lucia. They sent a tracker to St. Lucia. When they got to St. Lucia, they heard he had gone to Dominica. They sent a tracker to Dominica. When they got to Dominica, they heard that he was in the Virgin Islands. And they sent the trackers to the Virgin Islands. 6 months they're tracking down this young man. And then one morning, the slave owner heard a commotion on the plantation. And he grabbed his gun, come out in the plantation yard. What is this noise? Jupiter has returned. Jupiter voluntarily returned back to his plantation. And the slave owner decided that he was going to get 45 lashes with the cat o' nine tail and with salt and pepper rubbed into the wound. But he said to Jupiter, "Why did you come back? Tell me, why did you come back?" And Jupiter said, "I miss my children. I did not wish to be free without my children." So he came back, reinserted himself back into slavery because he wanted to help to raise his children even in slavery. Came back for his children. I believe that is a model of masculinity. That is a model of African masculinity. There can be no freedom without your children. There can be no liberty or no sense of being a man if you turn your back on your children and leaving them to fend for themselves. And if our enslaved ancestors knew that, if Jupiter was one of thousands of African men who stayed in slavery to look after their children, why is it that we are having this problem today? So we have to take a new guard. There are issues of a psychological nature. There are issues about citizenship. You cannot assume that the adults will see the world in the same way that the children will. We can set standards, but we have to find strategies to help them along the way. So those young men in Jamaica, in Port of Spain, who are wreaking havoc upon their communities, we need to find a strategy to bring these young people back into our fold. And education is one part of it, but there are other aspects of it. There are other aspects that we have to consider. This is a phenomenon. A phenomenon requires research. It requires objective thinking. So let us find a way to take a new guard. Let us say, we have done magnificently thus far by taking collective responsibility. But there are now members of our society who now require a special focus and a special dedication. I always admired the government of Norway. When the government of Norway had the financial resources because of oil. The government of Norway put aside 40% of all of the oil money for public investment. Every community will have a park. Every community will have a library. Every community will have a museum. Every community will have institutions within it to make you feel safe, to make you feel good. They created a circumstance where they said, if an elderly lady, if an elderly woman cannot walk the streets in peace in the community, there is something fundamentally wrong that must be fixed, because elderly people must be able to walk their communities in peace. So therefore, we need a new understanding of how to look at housing, how to look at educational institutions in our communities. And it should not be that because you are from a community where there is poor people, that community should not be the center of a strategy to give those people a sense of ownership. I think we have to find a new way. I do not know the answers, but what I do know is that you cannot throw the police at it. The police is not enough. I have seen in Jamaica, where I live, police everywhere, army, soldiers. It does not solve the problem. So we have to find a new way. I do not know what the answer is. If the answer to this problem was simple, it would have been found already. But we need to have a second look. Because if you take the evidence, here's what is happening. Too many young people with guns and too many old people with glucose. So our elder citizens are suffering, as you have heard, with sugar. Our young people have guns and our old people have sugar. And the two ends of our society are in problems. 60% of the black people in the Caribbean over the age of 60 have diabetes or hypertension or both. If you take diabetes and hypertension as a marker of health, let me tell you this. African people in the Caribbean are the sickest people in the world, because there is no community anywhere in the world with as much diabetes and hypertension as the Caribbean. We have the highest per capita number of people with these diseases. So, too many guns in the hands of young people, too much sugar and glucose in the blood of our elder people. This is a recipe for disaster. So, we need to understand this, grab this, and start all over again. As you can hear from my accent, I was born in Barbados. Barbados was the sugar colony of the world. Barbados was where sugar and slavery was first developed. Sugar, sugar, sugar. Everywhere in Barbados was sugar. 80% of the island was covered in sugar. And now Barbados is known as the amputation capital of the world. Amputations caused by complications arising from diabetes. So the sugar colony is now the amputation colony, and people cannot see the connection between the two things. When I was going to school, we were told, carry school a handful of sugar. When you get hungry, you eat sugar. As children, we ate sugar as a meal, because that was colonization. We ate sugar as a meal. White people ate sugar as a sweetener. We ate it as a meal. And all of these things have now come, the chickens have come home to roost. And this is why the reparations movement must step up its gear, because what they owe us, they must pay us. And they must also come back to the Caribbean and help clean up this mess that they have left behind. They created this mess. All of our people in the Caribbean, all of the African people in the Caribbean are now totally addicted to sugar. We all are addicted to sugar. We can't leave it alone because we were told to eat what you grow. And we grew sugar and we ate it. And now we cannot metabolize it, and we are now resistant, and diabetes is going to destroy our people. But guess what? They look at us and they say about, oh, those black people in the Caribbean are real fit. They have the fastest man in the world. They have the fastest woman in the world. They have all the beautiful singers and dancers. The Caribbean people are so sporty and so athletic, and that's the image that they project of us, as athletic and fit. But behind that image, we are the sickest people in the world with this diabetes and hypertension. And we have to grasp that and demand reparations for all of these issues. Because, let me tell you, if we do not get an injection of capital into public health, if we do not get an injection of capital to reverse illiteracy, if we do not get an injection of capital to modernize agriculture so we can eat healthy foods, all of the things that we need right now, we need a massive injection of capital in order to get it done. And it is more than what we can afford right now. Britain owes us, and they know it. They know that they owe us. They know, and we must step up our gear and demand it, because our future of independence needs it, requires it, and this has to be the project of the future. It is the next stage of independence, and this is where I will conclude. Emancipation, independence. Without reparations, you have not won the war. We won the battle for emancipation. We won the battle for independence. We have to win this battle for reparations in order to complete our struggle so that we can say, finally, we have won this war. Happy emancipation to everyone. Happy independence to everyone. And I will see all of you on the battlefield for reparations. Thank you.
Well, brothers and sisters. Professor Beckles, you're much taller than I am. No. Well, brothers and sisters, have we been treated with solid food for thought? Yes, we have. Yes, we have. And let me just expose a little secret here. It is the Honorable Prime Minister who extended this special invitation to Sir Hilary Beckles to be able to come and join us today. So I think there's a big round of applause all around. I feel quite honored to have been sitting in this audience listening to Professor Beckles this afternoon. I've heard him speak many times. I mean, I think he blew my gele off. I was holding it down. You know, it was so much on point. And one of the things I want you to remember as you leave us, but don't leave us, there's a lovely cultural program to come. Don't leave us. We are going to also award some of very important people who have given their energy and their service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and we want to honor them this afternoon, so don't leave us. But let me say, when you are going home, there is something that you might want to remember from Professor Beckles. And one of the things he said is that the reparations movement did not just start today. Yes? We can all agree with that. After we've heard that lecture, we understand what he means when he says it began way back during that project of emancipation. So we really thank him for that, and please let us remember to tell our children the advice we received from the Prime Minister about reading. Now we know what to read because Professor Beckles gave us some direction in terms of what we're going to go home and look for. The children are always Googling something. Am I right? They're always on the little things, the phones and so on. Help them, direct them what to look for on that machine. Okay, enough from me. We have a very interesting brother here, and I just want to bring him, to present him to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You know, we are always talking about Kwame Ture. Yes, you've heard, of course, of our brother Kwame Ture. Stokely Carmichael, the Emancipation Support Committee, is always talking about Kwame Ture. His eldest son is here with us today, and that is Brother Kwame Ture's son, Bokar Biro. Is Bokar here? Bokar, please come forward. Allow the people of Trinidad and Tobago to see and meet the son of Kwame Ture, that living legend of Pan-Africanism, that living legend of Black Power, that young brother, that brother who gave his life, who is honored all over North America and Africa and on the continent. We are very privileged to have his eldest son here. So please let us give him that warm Trinidad and Tobago welcome, that long African welcome. Right. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for coming. Let's hear it one more time. Okay, and I've just got one little house announcement, and forgive me for having to do this, but I understand someone's vehicle they need attention. It's PPP 6658. Please give your vehicle attention. PPP 6658. And there are two children backstage who cannot find their families. One is Amara and the other is Zandia. Please, mom and dad, auntie, granny, if you brought Amara or Zandia with you, they are sitting backstage because they seem to have gotten lost from their parents. Thank you very much for that. And now, before we get to the point where we thank everybody, we've got 3 presentations of awards to make today. And we'd love to be able to do it in the presence of the Prime Minister and in the presence of Professor Beckles. So, one is Sister Anna Maria Mora. Is Sister Anna Maria here? Sister Anna Maria is a lifelong social worker. She has worked with young people all her life, in schools, out of schools. She's at the point, has retired and still continues to work with young people. Is Sister Anna Maria Mora here? Yes. Anna Maria, Sister Zakia, would you be so kind as to come, please? Anna, and right. You heard the Prime Minister and Professor Beckles talking about the young people that need our special attention. This sister has been giving them her special attention her entire life. And we are really, really proud, very proud to be able to give her that award. Sister Anna Maria Mora, thank you very, very much. They need you to go a little that way so they can take your picture. Yes, and come forward, come forward. Right, wonderful, because the lighting. That's okay. Give me anything you want me to hold. They want you to look that way, right. And while I've got Sister Anna Maria Mora, we have Renee Cummings. Renee is not here, but her father and mom are here to collect this award on her behalf. Brother Cambon, would you be so kind as to join us so that you can give this award to Mr. Gally Cummings? You're going to give the award to his Gally on behalf of his daughter, Renee Cummings. So please, Yes, yes. There you are. Oops, right. There's the Prime Minister shaking hands. And of course, Renee Cummings is an outstanding AI specialist. She's teaching at the universities abroad on the democratization of artificial intelligence. And that's brilliant. And we cannot thank her enough, because Renee has been a long-standing person who has supported the Kwame Ture lecture series. She misses nothing. If we ask her to come and speak to our children, to our young people, Renee is on a plane and coming home to do just that. So we particularly want to thank her parents. You know, they say the fruit don't fall far from the tree. So, you know, she has a mom and dad who we are very proud of. Right. Let him, the press wants to see his award, Baba. Let him hold it for his daughter. Right. Thank you very much. Okay? Right. And our third awardee was Mr. Michael Sudakasa. Is Mr. Michael Sudakasa with us, or did he have to leave? He was our special guest at the Trade and Investment Symposium, but Mr. Sudakasa came from very far. He traveled, right, he traveled for 27, I think, or 40-something hours straight to get here, to be able to participate in the celebration. And so we are very, very much, we have his award, but I think he had to leave us and get back to the hotel. So, Sister Zakia, could you, is he here? No. Sister Zakia, could you kindly give the award to Brother Kafa on behalf of Mr. Sudakasa? Yes. Thank you very much, and we will get it to him at the hotel. Right. Okay. And with that, that brings us to the close of this very unique and very, very special moment. If our Prime Minister has a moment and time, we would invite him to go back up to the VIP area and Professor Beckles to see and enjoy the cultural program that is going to follow. We know that the PM's time is not, it's not elastic. So, okay, this is for, yes. Okay, while I'm here, let me, as the Prime Minister takes his leave and Professor take their leave, can we please, I'm getting a request for a group photo. Professor, Prime Minister, the press is asking for a group photo with yourself and Brother Cameron.